Not yet. Hello, everyone. It's Sonia McDonald here. Ken's like, "Are we live?" And I was like, "Not yes, we're live." And we are interviewing the amazing Ken. He is a finalist in our Outstanding Leadership Awards. He was a finalist in our 2020 awards as well. And excuse me, I've got a cat that's deciding to crawl across. I love what he stands for. I love his insights and how he sees leadership, how he actually espouses leadership. He is with us today on the Leadership Lounge, all the way from Northern Ireland. He's got a company called Ready to Grow, and he's also really passionate about Kennen. Is Kennen.AI? Is that how? Yeah, yeah. And we were just talking about it offline, getting quite emotional about it because it sounds like an incredible platform, which I know I'd love him to share with everybody. But how are you feeling? Like, this is the second time you've been a finalist in the awards, and you saw from afar what was going on with the first awards, and actually your message about that meant a lot to me around the courage that we displayed during that time. But how are you feeling again being a finalist in these awards where we're championing kind and courageous and inclusive leadership?
What's that quote? It's an honor to be nominated. No, I'm really excited. I'm hoping to not be the bridesmaid this time, and maybe no, just joking. No, it's honestly it's been awesome. It's we love seeing what you do. We love your posts. We love sharing them with our clients and sort of talking about them. As you mentioned the first award show, and I think that was one of the definitely amazing stories that came out of COVID, is where the people that really did well during COVID are the ones like yourself that didn't give up, that didn't, and were faced with every possible challenge you could face. And, just when you think things are getting better, boom, the rug's pulled out from underneath you again. And I think the people that had the fortitude and the strength to see it through and know that this was eventually going to wane and we would get back to somewhat of a normal existence, are the ones that really thrived. And look what you've done since, like with your books coming out and some of the stuff we just talked about. It's been amazing to watch, and it's really good. I think during COVID, I think everybody really loved seeing those success stories, and everybody was glued to LinkedIn because we were all at home, and there was a lot of spare time to kill.
Well, there were some times where I was a bit like, "Oh, this is really tough." It was kind of like, I think they always say, which I'm a great believer in, it's leadership really does stand out when the seas are rough. It's easy to kind of sail the ship. Obviously, you still need a license. It's still really easy to sail the ship when seas are smooth, but when it's that crisis and things are truly rough and challenging. And I remember when literally the day it was like COVID hit, I can't remember the exact date. It was the date we were about to announce the finalists, and I was sitting in the city in my office with the team, and it was literally like this tornado of like people running around, and I was sitting with the team going, "What's going on?" And everyone's like, "We've got to go, we've got to leave, it's coming, COVID, we've got to go." And I was going, "What's going? Don't announce the finalists, don't cancel the awards." And I'm sitting there going, is there a tidal wave coming? Are we having to escape? And so no, we're all about courage, right? That's kind of like our MO, that's our values. This is what the awards are about. But it was a lot more challenging that year. But we're on a mission. Like when I think you've got a mission and you know what you kind of know, like that mission and what you're trying to bring to life. Like, we were talking offline about, especially like what you're doing. It fuels you, right? It's that passion as a leader. You go, if I stay true to my purpose and what we want to and what we believe in, you can do anything.
Yeah, noble purpose is so important and overlooked. And you see the examples, the flip side of that. The world's dealing with so many bad leadership decisions now that COVID's starting to get back. Look at the airports. Like, I think I've spent more time in the last 3 weeks stuck in an airport with flights canceled than I've been flying or been at home. So it's, everything sort of, there's a lot of really poor leadership decisions made. And I think the workforce resignation is sort of showing that, hey, we're not going to put up with that anymore. We want something better. Which is good. I think you kind of need a shake up like that every once in a while. Unfortunately, it came at such a big cost, but yeah.
I'm interested to hear that you're experiencing that as well. Where I've again traveling a lot now because everyone, like, it's been really great. Like everyone's really excited about doing a lot more in the leadership space. So I'm traveling a lot more, but I've had the same, like, without a doubt, every plane trip has been delayed by at least an hour, waiting for luggage for an hour. And I get the challenges and they're short staffed and things, but it's like, wow, it's interesting that's happening over there. So,
Oh, it's bad. They
leadership.
had to bring,
Yeah,
yeah, they
sorry.
had to bring, I was going to say they had to bring the army down in the Republic of Ireland to help with the airport because it's so bad. Like we're talking like massive people getting stuck in Spain. It's insane. Like it's just something unseen before, you know? So yeah.
I'm seeing. If you have a look on Twitter, particularly Qantas, you'll see some really interesting comments and commentary around. Again, you look at, and I think it was really interesting seeing the best and worst of leadership during COVID, and I think even reading the submissions for the awards is, I felt that it was around how do we, because I think talking about social media, which I'd really love to explore what you're doing with Kennen, um, is that in social media we tend to see so much negativity, right? This leader did this wrong, this politician did this wrong. And I thought, we've got our youth, our generations of today and tomorrow seeing that. We got to turn this round, and we need to show more positive role models, more inspiring leaders and people like yourself, because we tend to do what we see or hear, and more the impact that has on mental health and has on bullying and things like that. It's I mean, so tell me about. I know you've got Ready to Grow and you've got Kennen. So tell me a little bit about both of those.
So Ready to Grow is really the people process tech arm of the business. So it's something
Yeah.
that I've been very passionate about. So as part of my career, I was with PayPal for a number of years, and I was
Yeah.
lucky enough to be selected for the technology leadership program. And a big element, it actually surprised me, and it was the first sort of um, step into my journey of empathetic leadership. Is they talked more about the emotional qualities and emotional quotient of leadership, and they talked about communication. So a big focus of TLP was how do you communicate and how do you listen to people? So a lot of the times there's misalignment and goals get missed because two people can't communicate effectively. And you might have Mary who wants to tell you about her cats on the weekend, and she's very excited and passionate about it, and she needs to get that out before she can get to work. And then you have Bob who just wants to come in and run everything by the numbers and get home to his family, and so understanding where people are coming from and just taking that second, it was something that TLP taught me, and something that I've sort of tried to put in my leadership um, style ever since. And then we moved to Australia, I think 7 years ago now. And we started working for a company called, well, I started working for a company called Kenstar. And through that journey, again, it was you talk about noble purpose and well, about purpose and leadership qualities. And um, back in 2016, it was really, really, really hard to get developers in Brisbane. Everybody wanted to go to Sydney or Melbourne or overseas.
Oh,
It
true.
was
Yeah.
And so it was like, how do we build a team? How do we build a really strong technology team here for a product that not a lot of people are interested in? Nobody really wants to talk about finances. It's like schools don't really teach it anymore, and families don't talk about it as much anymore. So we started talking, and that was my approach: is noble. What's the noble purpose of this? So why would people come to a company like CanStar? And it was like to save their family money. So if you want to have pony lessons for your daughter or son, or hockey lessons, whatever it is, that money that you save every month is going to help you be able to afford those things. So it's going to give you the best you or the best family you can be. And I'd start connecting to people, and they'd be like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then you kind of build it up. Um, and I really love that. I really love sort of interacting with people and helping solve problems, and hearing people's stories and finding out how I can enable them to sort of grow to that next level. And when I got my permanent residency in Australia, I was really passionate about starting my own company and doing that, helping companies that had a really great message or had really great teams that were struggling to get to that next level because they didn't have the budget to hire the right people, or they were struggling because they didn't know how to get their message out to the world. And that's really what we do, is we come in and sort of help get people's message out. So we'll make sure that if they've got really great people, we'll provide the training that they need to do the role that they really want to do, they're really passionate about. And if you can do that, if you can train people to live in their passion, then you build loyalty, you build trust, and you build a brand that you can be proud of. And I think those brands are the ones that become the unicorns.
Very true. Any that you're particularly proud of?
Um, Oh, I think all of them. I think hearing, it'd be really hard to pick. One really good story that out of COVID was a company called SMSI, and the founder is so passionate about what he does, and so it's a company that helps shut down mines. And again, very boring. You hear that, and you just kind of go like, "Oh, I don't want to hear that." You just like, "What's next?" But when you hear his story and his background and why he became an entrepreneur, you become so impassioned by that story that you just want to see him
Yeah,
succeed. And you just help. Like you don't care about the billing, you don't care about the hours. You just want to see him get to that next level. And that's what I love. I love seeing companies like that that are so passionate get that break and sort of grow
yeah,
to that next level and get the opportunity. It's honestly, maybe it's because I'm older now, I think, in my career, and I'm less worried about finances and less worried about stuff. So you can really focus on the people side of things and that
yeah.
excitement of seeing people grow. It's probably like becoming a grandparent versus being a parent. When you're a parent, you're so worried about everything. And as a grandparent, you can kind of sit back and relax and see the mistakes you made and, go along the journey and just have fun with it.
It's so true. It's the same when I coach people. Obviously we have we get really invested, and sometimes well, a lot of the time actually our leaders will reach out to us between sessions and things and go, oh, and like, I'm so invested in you. I'll do anything to help you succeed. It's not about the money. I'm here to support you and be your cheerleader and trusted advice. And it's kind of like, when you make it about the person because you really care about, or the company because you care about their success, um, people really, if people really align themselves, really are passionate about that. So, and I love what you're doing with Kennen. Like, Kennen, what do you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Kennen started, we talked about this before. It started really as a way to make Ready to Grow easier. So there was a lot of mundane stuff that we do in cybersecurity and ISO compliance that's really, really, really boring. And it's the same thing every single time. And every company thinks that their business case is so unique. But really, when it comes down to compliance, everything's the same. It's got to be the same, and it's got to be a tick box that you sort of check off. So Kennen was created as an AI platform to go through all that data, sort through it, make sure that you were compliant, and whenever something was out of compliance, it would tell you the actions you sort of needed to do to become compliant again, and it would reduce costs. So it was cheaper for companies to sort of use that versus having to bring in an expert every single time that they needed to update something or get. Was detected. Oops, sorry about that. And so as it sort of developed. We were doing an exit interview with one company. So they had an employee that they were struggling with, and they didn't. It was a startup, and they didn't have a big HR team. And this person was very disruptive in meetings, and there was a disagreement with a male staff member, and she had a breakdown. She threw stuff, she slammed doors, she had a breakdown, a complete meltdown, and they were going to try to let her go, but they were afraid of legal repercussions, and they had never sort of navigated that before. So we stepped in and we helped with an HR lawyer, and we got advice, and we sort of sat down with them and said, okay, let's do an exit interview, make sure everything's documented. And as we were going through that interview, she told us her story, and we found out that the person that she had the breakdown with was abusing her, and it had been abusing her for a long time, like since almost immediately since she started there. The first day, he started in with inappropriate touching and inappropriate comments and bullying, and um, I started thinking through, and we got her help, and she ended up keeping her job, and we got her to work remotely, and we fired the person that was doing it, and we reported to the authorities. And it's a success story, if you could call it that, because it's when you're dealing with stuff like that, I don't think there's any winners, right? It's one of those really, really, really tragic things. And as I started to reflect on it, because it was something that touched me personally, because I've got a daughter and I've got a wife, and um, I've got a mother and a sister, and fairly female dominated family. And I started wondering, like, has this ever happened to you? So I started talking to my mom and my aunts and my wife and my sister, and all of them had their own stories of abuse in the workplace and bullying and things, that challenges that they had to go through. And I was floored. So then I reached out to my wider audience and started talking to female colleagues, and all these stories started flooding in, and it became the norm versus the exception. And that was just mind blowing to me.
Oh,
And I started looking at the stuff Kennen was doing for the compliance, and said, we could have caught a lot of this stuff if somebody would have cared, or somebody would have looked, or somebody would have um, admitted that there was a problem, we could have caught it. We have everything's recorded nowadays. Everything is
Yeah.
we record everything. So we have all these data metrics that could prove the bullying, and ultimately that's what we use to help get justice for that girl. Was we use the data points from conversations, from logs of people checking in at different times, telephone calls. We used all the data that's available, and we're already tracking for compliance anyway. And so we started it just with business and just say, how can we help people in the business place? But then we started to look, and we talked about this. Some of the stories that were emerging through COVID, where people that were supposed to be community leaders were hurting people in the community because they had the opportunity to. And that really, again, blown away and shocked, and it became so publicly known, and people are just ignoring it. We become so desensitized to these horrible things that happen because there's so many horrible things happening, and there's so much media nowadays, and we're sort of conditioned to look for that next dopamine hit, what's going to make us feel better versus feel bad, that we ignore it. And a lot of people are getting hurt because they're not
Yeah.
aware. And that's really what Kennen started to do. So I started to look at things very similar to what we do with Ready to Go. We look at everything as an ecosystem, and everything in your ecosystem impacts your success or failures, right?
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of positive. You talk about social media and how there's a lot of negativity on social media, and people will jump on the bandwagon of saying, "Oh, this leader's bad" or "this person's bad," and then it just becomes this never-ending cycle until the next thing catches people's attentions, and then they jump in that bandwagon. But we need somebody to break through that, and that's what Kennen does. Is an app that's in your pocket that sort of lets you track how you're feeling with different interactions. If you're in a situation or proximity of a situation where bad things have happened, it'll notify you and give you some tips on. One of the things we talked about was when nightclubs opened up in Northern Ireland, there was a rise, and not just Northern Ireland, it's all over the UK, all over Canada, all over the US, where people were taking advantage. They hadn't gone out, and they were using date rape drugs. And the same nightclubs were having multiple attacks. In one nightclub in Northern Ireland had 13 attacks within 3 weeks, which is like mind blowing. And so I started thinking, well, if you had an app and you were going into a nightclub where
Yeah.
something bad happened, and it notified you, hey, something bad happened here, be careful, cover your drinks. If somebody buys you a drink, take a picture of them, take their contact details, be safe. Here's things that you probably wouldn't think about because you're just so excited to be back out in the nightclubs because of COVID is over, and you just want to go out. And when you're in that mind frame, your safety mechanisms tend to be ignored, and stuff that you would normally trigger some sort of safety response, you
Yeah.
put aside because you're so happy to be out again. Same thing with travel. People are so happy to be traveling again, they'll put up with more stuff, or they'll be more annoyed, depending on your personality type of the delays, or so it's really just a way to help keep people safe and look at their ecosystems and look for trends and pattern, and use the data to say, hey, maybe there's a problem at work, or maybe there's a problem at home, or maybe, and it's a safe space where people can. I think people are afraid to be judged, so they
Yeah.
won't talk about it, or they're afraid of the consequences. So it's an app that removes the consequences, it removes the judgment. It's just we're using your data for good, versus companies, and in technology, we tend to use people's data to sell them something. This is a way to sell
Yeah.
them mental health and well-being and safety. And I think we need more products like that in the marketplace, more people that care
Wow.
about people's genuine being than versus just ROI.
So, I mean, I know a lot of like with these sort of things, I know for me in particular is like this whole privacy thing as well. I mean, how does it like how does that work with the app?
Well, so everything we use for the app, so for the nightclub example, this is publicly, like, we sit there and we take data from publicly available sources. So we take data
Yeah.
from newspaper articles, we take it from police reports. So all this stuff is already publicly available.
Okay.
So we can notify people, and you can identify people that have, even in a workplace, you can identify that my phone has this unique identifier. I don't have to say that that unique identifier belongs to Ken Reddy, right?
Yeah.
And if people have interaction within a certain proximity of something, we can tell them without being specific that, hey, there was bullying here. These are the things you can do to cope with bullying. These are the
Oh,
resources
that's
you have
great.
available to you. And it keeps things anonymous, but you're still tracking the data, and the people's data is always left within the app. We don't do anything with it. We don't sell the data. We don't want your data. We don't want to be breached. At no point do we take responsibility or custodial ownership of your data, because that's one of the values that we have in the company, is we think people need to take control of their data again and use that for good versus use it for the stuff that it's being used for now. So selling people stuff, getting people into debt.
I think what I love about it, what you hear, because I don't really follow the news, which is not great. So if I was to go to a nightclub, which I do so often, I'm joking, I don't. But like, for instance, if I was to go to a nightclub, and because I'm not really, like, sometimes I go, oh gosh, like, I mean, obviously I follow, I might read the AFR or the Australian now and again, but it's sometimes the media can be a bit challenging to read and watch, right? But I wouldn't have a clue if I turned up to a nightclub, and the amount of times people will tell me, "Did you hear such and such happen?" And I'll go, "No, what am I like?" I just miss, some of the stuff. So therefore, I wouldn't know. Does that make sense? If I showed up to a nightclub, because I don't listen to that sort of. I try to keep away from that, because I just think, oh, it's so so upsetting. I would be like 13. Like, you talk about 13 incidences. Like, that's just, to me, mind-boggling.
And I think as a society, what we found is that people are trained to think it's not going to happen to them. So they don't, and they don't want to be viewed as paranoid. Again, they don't want to be judged. So they don't want to, if you read something like that and you've got a natural concern, your friends who might not be the best, real friends, will make fun of you and say, like, "Oh, come on, you're just being, let's just go out. And it's one of those things where that's what we wanted to do with Kennen, and sort of that's how it progressed, is like, here's something that's just going to give you the data, right? And you talk about the media and the news and how influential it is and how people sort of jump on that. That was something that we wanted to include as well, is like, how do you feel when you read the news? Are you influenced? Do you immediately do something else? And we wanted to start showing people what their patterns are, because sometimes that's not evident when you're sort of going through the motions of life. It's really hard to self-govern yourself unless you're actively aware, or you've taken some sort of leadership journey, or you've taken some sort of self-awareness journey. And there's a lot of people that are just on autopilot. So they'll be triggered by something in the media, and then they'll go and post like 10 of random things that are related to whatever triggered them on social media. And we want to help people get away from that behavior of, like, start giving them an unbiased view of what's really going on in their own ecosystem versus what people are telling them is going on in their ecosystem, which I think is something that the world needs more of.
I don't know, even as a parent, you talk about you have a daughter. I would want my daughter to have that, the amount of times that she'll say to me, and then, I know I used to live in Brisbane, oh, I'm off to the valley, and I'd think, oh, okay, like, what's happening? Like, and I don't know where she's going, or so having that kind of information there for her, and her to have being cognizant of it, going, oh, maybe I shouldn't go here because the Kennen app's telling me that. Does that make sense? I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, and I think, talking about daughters, Gary Vee said it best, is like, the best way to protect your kids is to give them self-esteem. So giving them the self-esteem the self-esteem comes from being in a safe place and not being judged, right? And we've all been there. We've all had those horrible experiences with a teacher or with friends that maybe made fun of us or made a big deal out of something that we were struggling with. And it's impacted us for the rest of our lives. Like, it's one of those things that just imprints us. And that's really what we want Kennen to be, is something that takes away that imprint and says, okay, listen, that's a normal thought. Or if you go here, you do have to be careful, or.
I love that. Okay, I'm definitely going to do some more research, like look at it more closely, because I'm really proud of you for doing that. That's because I know how passionate, we were talking offline, like, you're really passionate about that empathetic leadership, and I do think that's the way that we need to be going, right? That I think if one thing that COVID has taught us is the power of empathy and kindness, and how important and vital that is today. So I think it's it's really great to hear you talk about that, because what does leadership mean to you? What does great leadership mean to you?
It's funny. I was doing a podcast with PayPal yesterday, talking to my old team,
Yeah.
and we talked about that, what mentorship and leadership really means. And I think early on in my career, it was a position that I strive to, because it was a position that everybody, you're supposed to go through life, and that's what you're told to do. Um, but I think TLP, the technology leadership program that I went through at PayPal, really changed that. It got me thinking about um, communication styles and how people communicate and people's journey, and
Yeah.
understanding, taking a moment to understand that journey is one of the most valuable things I could do. And one of the questions they asked me on the podcast was, if you could go back 10 years and tell yourself something, what would it be? And it would be that, listen, take a moment, take a breath. Sometimes as leaders, especially new leaders, and I don't know if you've ever read it, but there's a book that I recommend to everybody called The First 90 Days. And it's all
Oh, yeah,
about
I love
getting,
that book. Yeah, it's a great book.
and that's always been my strategy, is like the first 90 days, build your plan and attack, and it's just go through, and that's how you be successful. But I think what I tell myself now, or 10 years ago, is that's great. That's really good advice. But before you start that, take a moment to hear and understand the people that you're working with, because that's going to make your journey that much easier, and it's going to make your success everybody's success versus just your success. And I think that's really important, and something that's missing from a lot of leadership values is really understanding that. It's almost like making the transition, like we talk about parents to grandparents, or player to coach. It When you're a player, it's all about your success. But when you're a coach, it's all about you've got to make that switch in your head. Or when you're a parent, it's about your kids' journey and your kids' experiences. If you become a coach or a leader, it's about helping them along their journey, and it becomes less about you. You've had your time, and you're going to take what you've learned to help other people. And I think that's a really important switch that a lot of leaders don't make. They still want that glory. And I think what makes really good empathetic leaders are people that understand that they've had their time, and they've had their moment to shine. And now that what's really going to bring their product forward is making other people shine. And I used to tell my team all the time, like, I don't want you here for a long time. I don't want you to spend 5 years in this role. I want you to aspire to my role in 2 years, and I want to give you the information, or I want you to go on to Google or go on to whatever your dream is, because that brings in fresh talent. It brings in fresh people, fresh ideals, and it helps you grow along your journey. And you should always aspire to sort of move on to that next phase. And I think
Yeah.
as leaders, we have to spend more time kind of doing that and encouraging people to, get the best. But I think a lot of leaders are trained on um, what are my deliverables and what are my goals, and that becomes the major focus. And I think when that happens, you get the great resignation. You get people saying, "Listen, I don't want to be burnt out all the time. I don't want to be stressed out all the time." Yeah.
Very true. I mean, leadership is about helping and inspiring others to do more and be more, right, and learn more. So it's the greatest gift we can give leaders. Now I can talk to you for so much longer. We're already like nearly at 30 minutes, so I've taken like so much of your time. But I mean, in terms of the awards, like we're just so great to see you as a finalist again. And I know that you won't be able to travel all the way from Northern Ireland to Brisbane in a few weeks to come to the gala event. So hopefully you can jump online and watch it.
Definitely. Last time we
Yeah,
were all
it's
in Texas, and we had streamers, and we were celebrating. Yeah.
a lot of people were. It was actually really nice to hear like how many people were actually tune in virtually for it. This year it's going to be a completely different awards. We're really, really excited about it. Our speaker and our MC, and it's going to be huge. So the tickets are nearly sold out, by the way, which is amazing. So I think
Awesome.
everyone's really excited about getting together again. But it was just such an honor to hear what you're doing and how you're making your impact and difference on the world. And if anyone would love to reach out to you, Ken, like how could they reach out to you? Like what are some of the platforms that were best that they could contact you to find out more about what we talked about today?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the easiest because everything's on LinkedIn, right? So it's
Yeah.
just reach out to me through my LinkedIn profile, and you know, I love we love how we built Ready to Grow was through coffee chats and just meeting people and hearing their stories, and so reach out for a coffee, and whether it's virtual or in person, we travel a lot
Yeah.
now that the airlines are back up. So yeah, that's probably the best way.
Excellent. Excellent. No, thank you. I'll definitely check out Kennen. I just think I'm really proud of you for building this and creating this. And if there's anything we can do to help you as well over here in Australia, because we just love connecting and building and recognizing exceptional leaders like yourself around the globe. So I just want to say it's really awesome to have you in the awards and have you talking today. I didn't realize that we're matchy as well in terms of we're both at our blue. Very good coordination there. Probably had
forgot my glasses.
I know, you should have put on your black glasses or something. Do you have glasses?
I do, yeah.
Thank you so much. And if there's anything, please reach out to Ken. He's such a great leader, such a great human. And is there anything final, anything you'd love to say to everyone that's listening today? Anything final you'd love to say to people?
Get your tickets. Let's sell this thing out.
Oh yeah, thank you. Oh yeah, get your tickets. Definitely come. It's definitely, if you are in Australia or in New Zealand, we've got a number of finalists in New Zealand as well. Actually, it's just really great to see how many people around the globe. But jump online if you can't make it in person. And and if you are, next year we're going to be holding it, I think, in Melbourne, or in Sydney. We haven't decided yet. We want to take these around the globe, so you never know. We could be over in Dublin or London one of these days.
Yeah. Actually, we're opening up our new office in Canada when the awards are on, so we'll be bringing in from Canada. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, I'd love to go to Canada, so that'd be great. But thank you so much for today and sharing your insights about leadership. And thank you for being such a kind and courageous leader as well.
You too. Thank you. What you're doing is amazing. And, it's keep doing it because the world needs more of it. So thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. All right. Well, you take care and you stay safe.
All right. You too. Cheers.
All right. Take care. Bye.